Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Like Kay said, my name is Abby. I am a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Albany. I've been there for just under 2 years now, and Brett has been there just about five? Almost five, yeah. So tonight we are going to just kind of go through some of the basics in terms of sky spotting. So we'll start wires certainly for sure. So that's when we send out that destructive tag, and that's really just to say you need to take action absolutely immediately and know that damage is coming your way. So the Storm Prediction Center does these outlook climatology maps just to show exactly how many thunderstorm days we tend to have on a given year, or the yearly average, and then the thunderstorm risk days. So for our area, right up in here, we typically have fall between about 75 to about 105 thunderstorm risk days. So that means that within that range, on a yearly average, we have about 75 to 105 days where we're outlooked for severe weather. And then on the other side, that's the marginal or greater. So that's going to be a little less. So that's more of you're starting to get. I'm sorry, I messed this up. Let me start over. this this one's just thunderstorm risk days period. So that's just thunderstorms in general. So on a yearly average, between 2015 and 2023, we experienced about 75 to 105 thunderstorm days or thunderstorm risk days or risk for thunderstorms in our area on average. Then the second image on the left shows a marginal or greater severe weather risk day. So that means now we're moving out of that general thunder area, and we've got a marginal risk or greater. So that's a lot less. So we typically have about almost 20 to about 35. We fall into that kind of category there for marginal or greater days between those years. Then the slight or greater is even less than that. Typically you see, your slights range moderate, and you've got a mid-high. We've had some high days down in Plains, but those are where you're going to have your increased slight or greater severe weather days. We get about 5 to 15 on average in our area, and then the enhanced or greater is even less than that. So really, where we are, we don't have a extremely high chance for severe weather, or we don't have a lot of days throughout the year where we have an enhanced or greater severe weather risk, but it is certainly possible. Any questions on that?
I have my answer.
Okay.
I like the way you started, wondering how many people read those products. Because between myself and Chris, whenever we get those notices, we forward them by email to all our members.
Oh, wow.
So now I know how many read them.
Yeah. You're all right on with us. And yeah.
I read them. I just wasn't sure, make sure if what you were talking about was what he was sending.
Sure. Got it. Okay, good. I'm glad. All right. We've got one person that's And